been a morning like no other. Because at 4 o'clock in the morning, those of us who were staying at St. Stephen's House were woken by the shrill tone of a fire alarm and forced, half naked, to stand for an hour in the garden of St. Stephen's House. But it was redeemed, because there appeared in the moonlight Professor Françoise Honorary, and with all that romanticism of a high-level French lady, she whispered in my ear some words from Shakespeare. She said to me, "How sweet the moonlight sleeps upon the bank. Here will we sit and let the sounds of music creep in our ears. Soft stillness and the night become the touches of sweet harmony." And then the fire alarm stopped. Harmony, ladies and gentlemen, such a powerful word. Harmony is much more than a negative. Harmony is not simply the absence of discord. It is not simply the absence of dispute. It does not remove disagreement. Harmony is a very positive word, I would suggest to you. It's a word full of positive meaning. It requires there to be a difference. Some people think harmony means, oh, everybody thinks the same thing. No, harmony requires a difference. You cannot in music create harmony if you have just one note or a dozen of precisely the same note. Harmony brings together differences to create concordance. In the harmonious combination of many notes, each individual note is an essential ingredient of the effect of that harmony. And if you remove one note from a harmony, you diminish the harmony itself. So harmony not only requires but thrives on difference. But what harmony does is bring together differences so that they work together in a positive way to take account of all those differences and achieve the best possible result. Harmony, I'd suggest, is all about relationships, and that's been mentioned before, the importance of relationships during these last couple of days. And relationships are so important. And this brings me to happiness. Because I find the word happiness a very difficult one to cope with, and I had a couple of years ago to give a talk in Salzburg, and I have to add, Professor, that you have been much kinder, because it was only at the very last moment, as I was about to stand up, that it was obvious I was expected to speak in German, but that is not the case this morning. And, you know, I had to work out what's this relationship between gross national happiness and individual happiness, because they seem to me two very different things. And in the end, I came upon the only metaphor I could think of, which was to think of an artist painting a painting on a canvas. If that canvas is well made, with warp and weft which are strong and properly sized, that helps the artist, the individual, to paint a beautiful picture. It doesn't mean to say they will, it doesn't guarantee it, but it helps. Equally, an individual may paint an awful picture on a beautifully well-made canvas. So there are no guarantees. Equally, the canvas may be rotten and old, but still a good painter may be able to paint a beautiful picture on it, possibly even using its defects. So it seems to me that gross national happiness is the canvas. It's the responsibility of governance to weave a good warp and weft to create a strong canvas for each individual person to paint their own picture of their individual happiness. It doesn't guarantee they will, but it helps a great deal. But equally, on a bad canvas, people can be happy. And if we think about it, even in the most abject of circumstances, we sometimes experience great happiness. And the cause is invariably because of friends, family, and relationships. So I would like to emphasize this word, relationships. And harmony is about bringing differences together in a positive relationship. At which point, of course, my iPad goes off and I have to try and remember a code, which I've managed. It's very difficult, these, for an old person, you know, trying to remember all these codes. However, there was certainly no harmony in Bhutan after the death of the Shabdrung. For a couple of 100 years after the death of the Shabdrung, Bhutan would be one of the most inharmonious places you could imagine. Constant fights and battles between penlocks and monks. The life of the ordinary people very, very or unharmonious indeed. And I'm sometimes asked, why is the monarchy of Bhutan so well loved when those around have gone? And my answer is fourfold, because people who are interviewing, they like short sentences and just a number of them. Number one, the advent of the monarchy in Bhutan in 1907 brought about peace and harmony. And the lives of people after 1907 were transformed. The second reason, incidentally, all the kings of Bhutan have always remained very, very, very close to the people. And you see manifestations of that every year on National Day, when the king, having made his speech, doesn't come and sit with all the other dashos and limpos. He goes over and sits with the people on the concrete banks, now plastic chairs, on the other side of the parade ground. The third reason is that the kings of Bhutan have always lived very, very simply. And ostentation is not something which one sees with the monarchy in Bhutan. And the fourth reason I would suggest is that all 5 of the kings of Bhutan have demonstrably shown in their actions that their interest is not themselves and their own aggrandizement. Their interest is the nation and the people. But the important point at the beginning is that the advent of the monarchy brought harmony to Bhutan. And the lives of people in Bhutan have remained harmonious, apart from one short, unfortunate period, have remained harmonious ever since. If we look at today's world, and it's very apposite that I'm saying this situated here in the United Kingdom today, if we look at today's world, we see disharmony all around. Wherever you look, be it America, the United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, Hungary, South America, Africa, we see disharmony, we see political disharmony. One therefore must ask the question, why? And indeed, obviously, there are many, many different causes. Some of them will be local and specific. But I would suggest that there is perhaps a common thread that runs through many examples of disharmony in the world today. I'd like to suggest that perhaps disharmony arises because so many nations are using an outdated tool in order to carry out their governance. An outdated tool which goes back to the 19th century, and we're trying to use it to deal with the problems of the 21st century. we've noticed over the last 100 years or so that one feature has been the advocacy of the word democracy, and in particular a special model of the concept of democracy based on a number of Western nations, for example the United States, the Westminster model in the United Kingdom, and a growth of the view that there is only one acceptable form of democracy, and that is multi-party democracy. Any other sort of democracy is laughed at, scoffed. Oh, that's not real democracy. How can we possibly say that? You will be aware, for example, that one of Mr. Blair, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, one of his governments had just 35% of the popular vote. Can we really call that democracy? If we look in other countries too, we see situations where the model of democracy can create a very undemocratic government, especially with things like first past the post. The model of democracy with multi-parties, for example, emerged in Nepal, and one cannot really suggest that that immediately resulted in political harmony. Bhutan was already a harmonious country. I've had the great privilege and honour of knowing the kingdom for 47 years. And one of the characteristics which I attribute to Bhutan, and I've thought about this over many years, is the concept of harmony. Harmony between people, harmony between people and nature, harmony between people and animals, harmony between animals and animals. I have a white cat and a black dog. In winter, the cat sleeps on the dog. That is harmony personified, or animate, I don't know what, anamified, or whatever the word would be. Now, I would suggest that the model of political parties as a necessity for democracy started in, for example, countries like the United Kingdom as a result of pre-existing differences and divisions. The landowner versus the peasant, the factory owner versus the factory worker, sometimes divisions of political philosophy, the socialist versus the capitalist. Those divisions existed, and political parties came about as a result of those divisions. What does one do in a country where there is harmony and there are no divisions? Might it not be, and I ask it as a question, might it not be that the enforced creation of political parties results in divisions appearing which did not exist before? Divisions are essential for political parties, otherwise what's the point of setting up a political party? And if we think back to the origins of political parties in the United Kingdom, they were set up to represent the interests of a group of people, to preserve the self-interest of a group of people, as I say, the factory worker versus the factory owner. Now, those sort of divisions existed. Political parties were a manifestation of them. If there are no divisions and you introduce political parties, do you not then stand the risk of introducing divisions that never existed before? And I would suggest that this divisive nature of party politics in so many governments around the world is responsible for a large element of the disharmony that we see in the nations around us. I need not, and I won't, mention Brexit, because if I talk about it, Professor, my blood pressure rises and you may well be carrying me out through the exit. But if you look at Brexit, surely it is clear that the existence of our two-party political system is doing absolutely nothing to bring about a concordance of view which might lead to the best possible, I see the man going out of the exit from the European Union, if that is what is going to happen. Using 19th century tools to deal with 21st century problems is no way to go about things. The issues we have to deal with in the 21st century are very different from those of the 19th and the 18th. The issues we have to deal with in the 21st century, issues like environment, for example, they transcend the closed, hermetically sealed boxes of individual parties' policies. You're locked into a box of this party or that party. Environment transcends those boundaries, and yet because we are locked into this concept of different political parties, government and opposition, we find it very difficult to work together. I would suggest that environment is just one of the problems that we face in the 21st century, which transcends the concept of party politics. Now, what am I doing saying all this in a seminar or a talk which is supposed to be about Bhutan? Bhutan has given the world already two things. Bhutan has given the world a unique form of leadership. Can you quote any other monarch or president who has voluntarily handed over his authority to his successor? Can you quote any other king or president who has voluntarily, in fact by command, introduced a constitution which reduces, not increases, reduces his power? A unique form of leadership in His Majesty the Fourth King. Bhutan has given to the world, amazingly for a tiny country, a new economic paradigm, gross national happiness. I'd like just to sow a thought. In the 21st century, might not Bhutan be able to give to the world a new political paradigm? A democracy without political parties. Thank you.